Okay, today I'm going to show you how you can create your own tile map to bring into your game. In this case, we're going to use the Go Shooter, but you can create this certainly for the platform or any other game as well. I'm just giving you this example so you have an idea of how it works. So before I go over to Piskel and show you that part of the process, I want to first show you how you want to have your layers set up. So over here, if you look at the layers window, I have HUD, game objects, and background layer. If you're ever curious what's on those layers, I just uncheck and check and you can see what blinks. So the HUD, the heads up display, is the score. Game objects is anything that moves really, the player, the enemies, the bullet, explosion. And then lastly is your background layer, that's the tiled background layer. Always make sure that's on the bottom and you want it in this order. So in order to bring in a tile map that you can draw different objects with and place those tiles on your layout, you have to create another layer. So right click down here, you can add it at the bottom, we can always move it around. I'm going to title this tile layer. And I'm going to put this just above the background layer underneath game objects. That is the order you want to put it in. When we bring in our tile maps, we just want to make sure that we put it in the tile layer So let's go ahead and go to Piskel. I've already created this tile map. I'll just explain how I went about the process. As far as sizing, I didn't want a huge tile map because I wanted to keep it simple and just have a few choices to work with. I thought about solid objects and then objects that the player could walk over. So in this case, the solid objects, a bush, a block, a rock, and a fence. And objects that could walk over, I just did like a puddle, mud puddle, sand, and grass. That was kind of my thinking behind it. So real quick, let's go back to Construct. When you're in your layout and you go over to grid size, you can change this obviously, but this game is currently set up 32 by 32. So that tells you that's a good tile size to use for your tile maps. So to set this up, go to your resize button over here, and you'll see that for my example, I went 128 across by 64 top to bottom. 64 divided by 2 is 32, and 128 divided by 4 is 32. That makes each one of these 32 by 32, which is the tile size that'll work. I've also gone ahead, if you go to preferences, turn on the grid, make sure it's on, this little tick box, and put your grid spacing, if you hover over at 32, that's going to put your grid, I'll show you the other ones, 32 is going to grid it perfectly so that each tile you can see the outline. And then you can go ahead and, design your tiles, whatever they might be. When you're all done with that, I'm not going to show you the process. You guys are creative. You'll be able to do that. You're going to go save and then, export. And you're going to download, you're going to do this first one, sprite sheet file export. Just read it, 128 by 64 pixels, 1 frame, 1 column, 1 row. I believe that's the one I want. Let me see. Yeah, so download. That's going to go into my download folder. Make sure it goes there when you do that. Let's go back to Construct. We're going to go to Object Types, right click. This is an object, this is an object type. Go ahead and add. You're going to select Tile Map this time, not a sprite. Insert. You're going to click on your layout. Let's go ahead and grab it. So you got your folder. Grab that Piskel you just created in your downloads. Open. And there it is. Close. And then what you want to make sure is that your tile map, number one, that when you click on the tile map and go down here to the tile map tab, that it comes up. I'll get to that in just a minute. But before we do that, let's make sure this tile map is on the right layer. So when you click on tile map, run over to the left-hand side and make sure that it is on the correct layer. Oh, I think because we're clicked on this. Let's see, layer right here, layer. We want to make sure that it is on indeed the tile layer, so that should work perfect. All right, so now is the fun part. You get to draw. There's a few things I want to mention. First, I'm going to put these in and explain and show you what happens. So with the pen tool, you can go ahead and draw these shapes. So if you want to put a whole row of blocks here, maybe make the player's life a little more difficult to have to walk and hide behind these things, you can. Let's go ahead and put I don't know, some mud puddles in here and some rocks in the way. Just things to make it a little bit more difficult as he's moving around the scene. Okay, before I do anything else, let's go ahead and play it so you can see what happens. So you're noticing first that everything is transparent or underneath him. He's able to walk around, cross over things. The monsters even come through, which that doesn't bother me, but in this case, those objects need to be solid. So in order to make them solid, well, I guess to have collisions, the best way to do that is to actually go into each one of these tiles. But first, let's give it a behavior. So when you click on tile map, you're going to go over here to behaviors, and let's actually make it solid, which I've actually done that previously during the recording, but make sure you have your behaviors solid. And then we have to go into each one of these tiles. So you can view your tile as a whole, or you can click individually on these. So when you go into these, you want to make sure that the ones you wanted to be solid or have collisions have this little tick box. So that's the bush, we want that solid. The block, we want solid. The fence, we want solid. And if these aren't already adjusted, make sure your boundary boxes have been adjusted here. So use collision. The rock, again, make sure that these points are correct. You can do a guess where you right click and tell it to guess the polygon shape, and it does a pretty good job in the odd shapes, but you can always tweak and move these around. You can right click and add points. You're only allowed 9 points, so there's too many on this one. But so make sure those are all checked off. Use collision underneath tile properties. The ones you want transparent are the ones that your player walks over. Make sure use collision is unchecked. The grass, unchecked. Okay, so your ones that you don't want to have collisions, unchecked. The ones you do, you want to go ahead and check. Make sure that your behavior has been added, that it's a solid, and we should be golden now when we go to play this. So let's see. Oh, yep, he definitely gets hung up on the rocks and the blocks, and oh, he can walk over the mud puddles, so we're good there. So that's just a quick overview of how to do tile maps, adding objects with collision versus objects you can walk over, and how to properly set up your layers. There's a lot more to it, but that's just the basics. Good luck.